Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and today we have Shirin Hameed on. Now, Shirin, you're a chief marketing officer at Detroit Engineered Products, and it's really interesting because you actually started your career out as an engineer. And I love that because I love the way that you think in all of our previous conversations. You have such clarity in terms of how you thought about the challenges that we face as chief marketing officers in growing our businesses. And we're going to use some of that clarity today. We're going to be talking about why your B2B growth strategy is missing the trust factor and how important that is. I also wanted to just mention that there's an amazing side to you other than your engineering side, but you are also an artist. And you even have some of your pieces on the back wall behind you. But I'll let you explain maybe before we get started here a little bit more about your background, and then we'll dig in.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Steve. I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to be here on your podcast. Like you said, I come as an engineer, and in the B2B space, I've got about 15 years of experience behind me. And I've started off at the agency side, working off press releases in the good old days when press releases were a physical thing you used to hand over in dockets, and have moved over to the client side. And I mainly deal with engineering companies. I work from companies like Tata's to National Instruments and now at Detroit Engineered Products. And it's been a great journey so far. And I'm really excited to share anything you want to know about that journey with you.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to jump right in because the idea of really having kind of a whole missing link or a gap in developing trust behind our brands. And we all know our brands are trust marks, right? We know we're supposed to be trusted advisors to our clients. And so it's not like the word is a foreign concept to us, but you don't have to look any farther than like the recent LinkedIn Edelman Trust Barometer study that came out. One of the things that they said, and they do a worldwide study over 32,000 respondents, is that 61% of them, these are our buyers, think that we are being intentionally misleading. 61%.
61, that's huge. But can we really blame them? As marketers, we know all the tricks we pull. We know the punches we throw. So can we really blame them? And how do we avoid them feeling that way while we throw our punches, right? I think that's the key juggling act that we have to play over here.
Absolutely. And, just to kind of accentuate that so that we kind of lay the foundation here for the conversation, there was a different study that came out that said 74% of B2B buyers don't believe the customer evidence that we present to them. So how we package up what we do for our clients and what we could do for you, they're not buying it. Right? This is why the self-service B2B buyer journey is growing and growing and growing, and they're waiting longer and longer and longer, doing more and more of their research before they ever want to talk to us. And if they do want to talk to us, they have their top choices already in their mind. Right? So this is a big issue for us. Right? This is an issue that we can't just sit back. And in fact, I think it was Forrester recently in one of their surveys, and then the analysis out of it said, this is the number one thing that CMOs should be focusing on is building a plan to create trust behind the organization. If we don't have trust, we don't have anything. That's like a built-in, relationship dynamic, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to talk to you about, you talked right away about we lose trust because we tend to focus on just getting the customer. But like as CMOs, we really need to focus on the post-sale journey, right? This isn't just a customers now baton pass, right? Customer success has that. We're on to the next one. Tell us a little bit about your thought about, kind of like beyond product sales, but into building customer journeys and partnerships and why that's so important.
That's a great question. And I think you've established it really well in terms of the start point being the sale, right? Because at the start of your journey, whether you're in marketing or in sales, you believe that the end of the journey is the sale. You do all of this to get the sale. But the fundamental shift that you realize as you go up the value chain And you realize, especially in the B2B industry, is that the sale is not the end point. It's actually just the start of a much deeper relationship. It's not the product itself that you're selling, but you're selling a longer relationship with the client. And that is something that we often lose focus of, that the real work in a journey begins after we sign that contract. Now we have sold the product. Now, does that product actually achieve the goal that we have set it out to do? Do our clients actually get the value that we have committed to them? And that kind of narrative that we build with the customer is what will help the customer see us as a partner and not just a vendor. So for B2B companies, embedding ourselves in the customer journey where we are not selling a product, but we are selling a relationship, we are enabling mutual success. The more you succeed with our products or services, the more we grow together. And that is a crucial part that marketing can play with sales. That ongoing engagement, the continuous feedback loop, co-content creation, opportunities to keep the conversation with the client going. All of those things in building that relationship is something that marketers can really help with over and beyond that initial sale, that transaction that has happened.
So I love this because we really do need to shift the narrative from it's not just about getting in new logos, right? It's all not just about growing the pipeline. I think it was Forrester too. They said for B2B organizations, 73% of our new annual revenue need to come from existing customers. 73%. So if we're looking at, and we're looking at it kind of from a C-suite perspective, right? And how are we creating long-term sustainable growth in our business? We're focusing on things like NRR. We're talking about making sure that we have high customer loyalty, low churn rates, and that takes an absolute focus on the existing customer, not just from one department, but from the company, right? And I'll tell you, I had a conversation, this is like a couple of months ago, and it was a chief customer officer that was on the podcast. And his customer he was talking to, which was a CISO, a chief information security officer. And that gentleman had just gone through an evaluation of 14 different companies to hire that were a part of the tech stack that he was building out. And he said they all answered the RFP. They all said they checked every single box. It was a complete sea of sameness, right? He said, here's what I wanted to know. And it goes exactly to what you're saying. I just want to know what it's like working with you. What's the experience going to be like working with you after I hire you? That's the number one thing you want to know.
Absolutely. And that's the number one question that we hear from our clients as well, right? And that's a huge differentiator that we talk about, which is how to make sure that there's value added over and above the product that we are selling. So quite often we sit across the table and the sales pitch is made. And the first thing the customer will come back with is all of that is good, all of that is fine. But I've heard the pitch before. I've heard other companies say the same thing. Where are you guys different? What are you really bringing that's different to the table over and above that? And here's where something honesty comes in, which is where if you can say on the table that, yeah, maybe your product is similar. There's a little bit here and there that they don't do that we do. But at the end of the day, it's my team that makes all the difference. My team will show up when you need it. My team will take what it does to get the job done. And if you as a person can mean it, if you as a company can mean it, if you as a product can deliver that, then it's absolutely the deal is done. Authentically, if you're able to say that and stand up to it, that's a great position to be in.
You know, the story that you just painted for me in my head, I was like, they just want to think that they want to know, like, you're invested in us, right? It's not you made the sale, so now we're going to get regulated to a different team and it's going to be handed off and hopefully it all works, right? They want to know that you're there with them step by step. That's the feeling that I got that from what you're saying there. And you mentioned another word.
People want to be heard. Customers want to be heard. They want us to not be another checklist. So I think customers want you the way you want to be part of the narrative. Customers also need them to be part of your narrative. right? It's a narrative that you build together and jointly build success. I think that is something that a lot of companies are not focusing enough on. And that story that is jointly built is a very, very important growth engine for companies. In fact, the day after we spoke, there was a report in McKinsey's which came out that said that the cost of retaining a customer costs one third less than acquiring a new one. So you can save 66.6% resources upfront in just making sure your customer succeeds.
You know, that's so funny because, like, how many times are we in meetings and thinking about how do we become more efficient at this? How do we do this better, faster, so that we can save time, resources, money? The biggest efficiency gain that we can have is making our customers happy, right? And McKinsey's number puts like a KPI on it, right? Like it puts a hard number on that. Oh, I love that. I love that. I also love, you said something earlier, and you said, if we can show up authentically. And I wanted to know what you meant by that because you called it out specifically.
So, end of the day, I think what's happening off late, right, with all the data out there, with the companies are beginning to deliver similar products. The differentiator in the products is not as much. The feature sheets look similar. With AI coming, the gaps in your marketing team versus my marketing team is also reducing, right? There's a lot of gaps that used to be there that's getting covered up. But really, the key differentiator that's going to last for the long term is authenticity. And authenticity is not just limited to a brand. I believe authenticity is a single biggest differentiator across the table, right? Whether it's in relationships. If you're authentic in a relationship, that's going to work. If your brand stays authentic to the company, it's going to deliver. If your team stays authentic to the values that your company stands for, they're going to deliver, they're going to sustain. So, all of these, I think, is what can stand out in the long term and that can really deliver value. It's not about doing quick bug fixes. It's not about doing these small, small wins. It's about keeping your eye on the ball, playing the long game, staying authentic to your brand, staying authentic as a person, and delivering consistency with that as time goes.
I couldn't agree more. You can smell it a mile away when somebody's not really authentic with you, right? They're not invested. They're trying to spend as little time as possible. They're trying to get through the meetings, get on to the next. The authenticity really is a banner that just says, I'm here and I'm listening and I'm ready to do what it takes to get the job done, right? And let's roll up our sleeves and let's get in and do this together, right? That you can be counted on. I'd love to look up the actual definition of the word authenticity, but
I'll give you an example, at least in terms of an experience we've had. One of our sales guys, and this is when we had introduced our product development services as a company at GP, where base of it is you come up with an idea and we'll create a solution for you, we'll create a product for you. And I wish I could tell you the name of the company, but it's a huge agricultural company. And they came to us with like a really wild idea. And so when I was there, when the sales guy was briefing the team, and he said, okay, here's the idea. And the product development team goes, what did you promise? And he says, I didn't promise anything. I just said, we'll do our best and we'll get back to you with what our best can be. And it's not saying, hey, we'll do the work. And it was such a simple thing to say. And not everyone would have the guts to say that. And I'm so proud that the team could build this particular product. The product is in manufacturing now. We are building the third product for them. We are designing the third product. It's a multi-million-dollar deal. And all out of something as simple as we'll give it a shot. I'm not promising anything. I'll give it a shot.
wow. Yeah, because mostly what we hear is, yep, we could do that. No problem, right? And everybody says that.
And it takes a certain, amount of guts and a certain amount of confidence to say that my team's good. I think they can figure it out. But I'll let you know. I think that is authenticity, if you ask me. That's not salesy. A salesy approach would be, of course, we can do it. We've been doing it for so many years. We're so good at it. We've done so many things before. That would be salesy. And, the thing you can smell a mile away, which I shall not name.
Well, so, what you're talking about here is making the most of the interactions we have. Yet there's this self-buying journey, self-directed buying journey, self-education that happens there, learning more and more about us without asking us because they are worried, are we being intentionally misleading? Are we misrepresenting, right? Truly what we do and what they can expect from us. So in that kind of a world, what do we do? Like, how do we control the narrative when they're doing so much of the research themselves?
That's a very, very pertinent question today. Right? When I started off my career, there was this linear marketing flow that we went through, which was awareness, evaluation, consideration, and then finally decision. But today, that's just not the case. Today, and thanks to AI and thanks to the more educated customer, by the time the person reaches your table for the pitch presentation, they know as much about your product as you do. They have done the research. They have researched you. They have researched your competition. They have researched the differences between you and your competition. And you don't know at which point in the cycle are they anymore. They're just jumping in at all different points now. And as a marketer, my job, all of our jobs is to make sure that every touch point that they jump in at is giving the same message. Whether it's a review, it's a third party article, it's a demo, it's a white paper, anything we put out there, anything someone else puts out there, it stays consistent and it stays authentic to repeat that part because end of the day, they will notice if they come across discrepancies and you lose the trust right there.
Such a good point because a big part of controlling that. So we ask every C-suite executive that comes onto this podcast the same question. What are your two greatest challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth? You know what the number one answer was? Misalignment internally as the greatest challenge. So it blew me away at the beginning, right? Because I thought challenges are usually, it's like that stuff outside of our walls, right? That is, the trends, the COVIDs, the competition, stiff competition, right? We very rarely point the finger at us. But what you're saying is if we don't control and we don't have alignment, our own internal narrative of what we're saying and about what we do, then it's going to come out in a number of different ways. We need to at least control the things that we put out there that are part of the research that they do, that we have a consistent message, a consistent point of view into the marketplace. It's one of the biggest factors that creates the challenges when we are inconsistent in what we say about ourselves.
No, absolutely. In fact, when you were talking about the inconsistency part, one of the things that have struck me from last year, so Forrester put out I think the projection survey for the year 2025 in last December, and this figure really blew me away. Do you want to take a guess at what percentage of marketing leaders surveyed believed that their current team structures will help them meet their revenue goals next year? So, what is the confidence level I have that my team will meet the next year's revenue growth? You know what the number was? 82% believed their teams are not capable. Only 12% believed that they were capable. And out of that, only 7% felt that they have the right skills and competencies in place. I was staggered by that number. I was very proud of my team because my numbers are way higher than that. I was blown away absolutely by that number.
So what do we do? You just threw a big elephant just came into the room, right? So if we don't have confidence within our own team and within the company, we're not aligned. We're talking about a lot of internal insecurity here and a lot of internal challenges and problems that we need to address, right? Like, how do you think about that? Like, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because what are the solutions here? How do we gain greater confidence internally within our own teams and within the company that we can get the job done?
Just about aligning everyone, bringing everyone on the same table. So, this is something that I cannot stress on enough. Teams cannot be working in silos. You cannot have the sales guy doing their thing, the engineering team doing their thing, the support function doing their thing. There has to be a space for all of them to come on the table, have an open conversation about what's going on in the market, and build something together, build the narrative together as a company so that all the different touch points are saying the same thing. The customer is seeing the same thing. And we all believe not just in us, but in each other. Because working in silos, honestly, is the biggest reason why you don't know what the other person is doing. So you don't know whether you can trust them or not. Right? That's the bottom line. If I know what you do, I know whether I can trust you or not. It's that simple.
To add to this, I'd love to get your opinion on it. Is so amongst all these C-suite executives said, what are the greatest challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth? Number one, internal alignment. Number two, and I bring this up because it's going to get connected to number one here, is they said a lack of really deep understanding from the voice of the customer. And when I asked about it, the reason why that was a challenge and a big problem is that if we don't understand, then not only do we not know how we're meeting their challenges, but that voice of the customer is the number one way that we align teams internally. They're the highest voice of authority. It's not the CEO. It's not somebody on the board. It's not us. It's the customer. And if we can truly understand and use the customer as our divining rod, right, our directional North Star, then it takes and it helps us align because we're all where we are in our careers because we're pretty smart people, right? We can make independent, decisions. We know what to do, and we do. And we all end up running off in different directions. But if we focus on that North Star of the voice of the customer, it helps that alignment. And I would just love to get your point of view on that, what your thoughts are.
That's beautiful what you said. And it's coming at a good point because this is something that we have been talking about at DAP as well. And one of the things I championed this year is so we took from voice of the customer and we didn't want to limit it to the customer. So we initiated this meeting called Voice of the World. And every month we get all the stakeholders in a room. So I make sure that there are representatives from all the departments, whoever's market facing, every person who's customer facing, product facing. And we start the meeting with no charts, no graphs, just nothing, just saying, okay, what have you learned? It's as open ended as it gets, right? You all get 5 minutes each. Let's just go around the table and talk about what did you see different out there? What new are they being exposed to? What interesting thing did you hear? Right? As open ended as it gets. And we've got some of the freshest opinions and some of the freshest ideas from there. Just no spreadsheets, no datas, just people across the table talking openly, beyond numbers, beyond everything. And that voice that you comes from there, that's what you're talking about. That's the voice of the market, of the customer, of the prospect, of the world, really. So that's an initiative I'm actually very proud of championing, and I think it's going splendid so far.
I love that idea. I love that idea. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do here in this podcast is share really good ideas that help. And if we all share those ideas, that's like the rising tide that lifts all boats. If we can learn from each other, thank you for sharing that. I would love to ask you one last question. And this is the toughest of them because we've covered so much territory, right? That meeting, learning what's happening in the market, learning what's happening with our customers, helping that align and build trust, right? That's what we've been talking about. But our human brains, we only remember about 2 or 3 things at a time. If there was one thing that you wanted people to take away from our conversation here, the most important thing, what would that be?
So I'm going to go with build loyalty, whatever it takes, stay authentic, make sure your teams are authentic, make sure your product is authentic. I cannot stress on this enough. It has to be authentic and consistent across the board. And the third would really be that internally align all the teams. You have to get them on the table. You have to make sure that all the teams are speaking the same language. They're all approaching something a certain way. It cannot be people working in silos anymore. That has got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you had one recommendation on that internal alignment, because it is such a big issue, everything you said is all three are very important. But to start down the path of, because we're the chief marketing officer, we're not everything, right? But if we want to try to help lead this path, or maybe we're a CRO, or maybe we're the CEO, right? Like, what's the most important thing to start down that path to getting alignment inside the company?
So I'll tell you what's the biggest deterrent or the biggest obstacle to having that path is what you just said. Is having those different terminologies out there, which automatically says, hey, this is my job, hey, this is your job. End of the day, all your jobs are to ensure customer success. It's that simple. The minute someone says that it doesn't matter what department you're from, we're all here to make sure the customer succeeds. Let's sit down together and see what it takes to get it done. Right? Titles are beyond that. I mean, it shouldn't matter. So it's get everyone on the table, have an open conversation on what needs to be done and get it done. You're here for the same thing.
Because now that we have a customer success department, right, it's easy to say that's their job. It's all of our job. You could be in product development. It's your job to make sure that, because we can, I'm not going to pick on product people, but, we're all very intelligent people and we can get a product roadmap that we are in love with that's out of sync with helping the success of our customers, right? And what are the features and what are the ways that we're making it easier to use our products and have the impact greater? So we are all part of customer success.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the times I've heard our product development say, hey, we've got this really amazing feature. It does this and it does that. And it's got this shiny button and it's got all these drop downs. And at some point, someone in the room needs to say, all that's great, but does the customer really need it?
Exactly.
So I think that's what's really about getting everyone on the same page, on the same table. And end of the day, the sales guy is going to be like, all that's great. And can I really sell it?
Exactly.
Can I really, mark up my price because this feature exists? So it's very, very important. And I cannot stress on the importance of having everyone aligned on the same table, speaking the same language.
I have to say that we're going to have people with questions, and I would love to give out a link to your LinkedIn profile so people could easily reach out and ask those questions if that was appropriate. Is that okay if we do that?
That's all right with me. Sure.
All right. I said it before. Our goal here is to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think you were an amazing tide coming in, lifting all the boats today. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I would love to have you back on the podcast at some point.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I've really enjoyed our time together. And I hope you got what you're looking for out of it.